I want to address something I have watched happen to thousands of people, including those who work directly under me, and something I participated in creating without fully understanding what I was doing. You work more than your parents did. You work more than people did 30 years ago. You have better tools, faster computers, instant communication, and access to nearly all human knowledge in your pocket. And yet you are more exhausted, more anxious, and further behind than they ever were. This is not a perception problem. This is not about your discipline or your priorities. This is about a structural shift in how work consumes life. And I helped build the infrastructure that made it possible. The common explanation, the one you have heard and probably believe, is that you work harder and live worse because the world has become more competitive. Globalization, automation, the internet, these forces have raised the bar. Everyone is competing with everyone. If you do not work nights and weekends, someone in another time zone will. If you do not respond to emails immediately, you will lose the client, the promotion, the opportunity. The explanation continues. Technology has made work faster, so expectations have risen. Your parents had typewriters and filing cabinets. You have cloud storage and instant messaging. Naturally, you are expected to do more in the same amount of time. The logic is clean. The world sped up, so you must speed up with it. If you feel crushed, it is because you are caught in a global arms race of productivity, and the only way to survive is to push harder. This explanation is everywhere. It is in the articles you read, the advice you receive, the way your managers justify increasing workloads. It sounds rational, it feels true, and it is almost entirely wrong. I am not saying competition has not increased. It has. I am not saying technology has not accelerated certain processes. It has. But these are not the reasons you work harder and live worse. They are the cover story. They are the explanation that lets everyone involved, employers, platforms, even you, avoid looking at what actually happened. Here is the first crack in that explanation. If you work harder because the world is more competitive, then the people who work the hardest should be the ones winning. But that is not what you see. You see people working 70 hours a week who are still behind on rent. You see entire industries where everyone is overworked and underpaid simultaneously. You see burnout spreading not just among the ambitious, but among people who have no path to winning, no realistic chance of breaking through. If this was simply about competition, the hard workers would be sorted into winners and losers, and the losers would stop working so hard. But that is not what happens. Instead, you have whole populations working themselves into the ground with no upward mobility, no relief, and no end in sight. The second crack is this. The tools that were supposed to make work easier have made it harder. Email was supposed to reduce the need for meetings. Instead, you have more meetings and more email. Smartphones were supposed to give you flexibility. Instead, they gave your employer access to you at all times. Collaboration software was supposed to streamline communication. Instead, it created an expectation of instant response and constant availability. If the problem was simply that the world sped up, then better tools would have bought you time. They did not. They bought your employer more of your attention. The third crack is historical. People in the 1950s and 60s were not lazy. They built highways, sent humans to the moon, created the foundations of the computer age. They worked hard, but they worked defined hours. They came home. They were unreachable in the evening. They took vacations without checking in. And the economy grew faster during that period than it has in the last 20 years. So the idea that you must be available at all times to remain competitive is not supported by the evidence. Something else is happening. This is where the mistake is. The belief that you work harder because the world demands it is a misdiagnosis. The world did not demand it. The world accepted it. And you were never asked whether you agreed. What actually happened is this. The boundary between work and non-work was destroyed, and it was destroyed deliberately, by design, for profit. I am not talking about a vague cultural shift. I am talking about specific decisions made by specific people, including me, to build tools that would keep you engaged, reachable, and productive at all times. We did not set out to ruin your life. We set out to make tools that were so useful, so seamless, so integrated into your day that you would never put them down. And we succeeded. The iPhone was not designed to be a work device. It was designed to be a life device. That was the vision. A single object that could handle everything: communication, entertainment, information, navigation, photography. The goal was to make it indispensable. And once it became indispensable, it became the place where work lived. Not because we planned it that way, but because we built a system that made separation impossible. Before the smartphone, work had a location. It happened at the office, at the job site, at the store. When you left that location, work stopped. Your boss could not reach you. Your clients could not reach you. You were off. The smartphone destroyed that. Suddenly, work had no location. It could happen anywhere. And because it could happen anywhere, it began to happen everywhere. Chapter 2. The boundary was not an accident. I need to be precise about what happened next, because the destruction of that boundary, the one between work and life, was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something worse. Once the boundary disappeared, your employer gained something they had never possessed before: unlimited access to your time without paying for it. This is not metaphorical. This is not an exaggeration. I am describing a transfer of economic value that would have been impossible in any previous era. Your parents worked 40 hours. If their employer wanted 45 hours, they negotiated. The employer paid overtime, or hired another person, or the work did not get done. The boundary created scarcity. Your time was finite, measurable, and therefore valuable. You work 50, 60, 70 hours. Your employer does not negotiate. They do not pay overtime. Not if you are salaried, not if you are management, not if you check email at 10 p.m. or draft reports on Sunday. The work gets done because the technology I helped create ensures you are always reachable. The boundary that created scarcity is gone. Your time is infinite, unmeasurable, and therefore worthless. This is the actual mechanism. This is how technology made you poorer while making you work harder. Let me show you the arithmetic. A worker in 1975 earning $50,000 per year worked approximately 2,000 hours. Their effective hourly wage was $25. You earn $50,000 per year in inflation-adjusted dollars, the same salary. But you work 2,400 hours, 2,600 hours, sometimes 3,000 hours when you count the emails after dinner, the weekend catch-up, the work you do on vacation because you cannot afford to return to 300 unread messages. Your effective hourly wage is $19, or $17, or $16.67. You received a pay cut of 20 to 40%. No one announced it. No one negotiated it. It simply happened, facilitated by the device in your pocket. Your employer will say you are salaried, that your compensation reflects your total contribution, that flexibility benefits you as much as them. This is the cover story. The reality is simpler. They are extracting hours they do not pay for, using tools that make those hours invisible. The previous generation worked hard. I am not romanticizing the past. I am not claiming they had easy lives. But when they worked extra hours, those hours were visible. A manager who demanded Saturday work had to justify it, document it, often compensate it. The hours had weight. Your extra hours have no weight. They dissolve into checking in and staying on top of things and being responsive. They accumulate into full workdays, full work weeks that appear nowhere on any timesheet. This is not wage theft in the legal sense. The law has not caught up. This is something newer, the technological erasure of compensable time. Here is where the conventional explanation becomes most dangerous. You have been told that technology increased productivity expectations, that because you can do more, you must do more, and if you do not, you will fall behind. This explanation sounds plausible. It is backwards. Technology did not increase what you can do. It increased what you can be asked to do without your employer hiring additional people. Consider email. A manager in 1985 who wanted to communicate with 30 people wrote a memo, photocopied it, and distributed it. This took time. This took physical effort. This created a natural limit on communication volume. That same manager today sends an email to 30 people in 45 seconds, then sends another, then another. The physical limit is gone. You are one of those 30 people. You now receive 50 emails per day, 70, 100. Each email represents a request, a question, a demand for your attention. Responding to them is work, cognitive work, emotional work, often hours of work. But your job description did not change. Your salary did not increase. You simply absorbed the communication volume that would have previously required 3 people to manage. This pattern repeats across every technological tool. Collaboration software that allows instant document sharing means you review materials on shorter timelines. Project management platforms that provide real-time updates mean you are expected to stay current constantly. Smartphones that enable work anywhere mean you work everywhere. The productivity did not go to you. The productivity went to your employer in the form of fewer people hired, lower labor costs, more output per worker. You are working harder, you are producing more, you are earning less per hour of effort. This is not a paradox. This is the system functioning exactly as designed. What I saw happen. I watched this unfold in real time. In the early years after the iPhone launch, we tracked usage patterns obsessively. We knew when people picked up their phones, how often, what they did. The data showed something we had not fully anticipated. People were using their devices for work far more than for entertainment or communication. The business world adopted the iPhone faster than we projected, not because we marketed it to them. We marketed it as a life device, a personal device. But employers saw what we had built, a platform that made their workers accessible at all times, from all locations, without additional infrastructure cost. I sat in meetings where enterprise clients explained what the iPhone meant for their operations. They could reduce office space because people worked from home. They could eliminate overtime because salaried workers answered emails at night. They could expand into new time zones without hiring locally because their existing workers could take calls at 6 a.m. or 10 p.m. They described this as increased flexibility and efficiency. They were not wrong. But the flexibility was theirs. The efficiency came from your unpaid hours. I'm not saying anyone set out to exploit workers. I'm saying we built a tool that made exploitation frictionless. And the market did what markets do. It optimized for profit. The collective action problem. You cannot solve this individually. If you set boundaries, if you do not check email after 6 p.m., do not work weekends, do not respond immediately, you are correct that you will be seen as less committed. You are correct that in many industries, someone else will take the promotion, the opportunity, the job itself. This is not because you are insufficiently disciplined or strategic. This is because you are trapped in a collective action problem that technology created. When everyone is available all the time, availability becomes the baseline. When everyone responds immediately, immediate response becomes the expectation. When everyone works weekends, weekend work becomes standard. You cannot individually opt out without penalty because the technology has shifted the entire landscape. The boundary that once protected everyone now protects no one. Your parents could leave work at work because everyone left work at work. The boss could not call them at home because the boss could not call anyone at home. The protection was universal, structural, technological. You cannot leave work at work because the technology allows your employer to follow you. And because it allows them to follow you, they do. And because they follow you, they follow everyone. And because they follow everyone, anyone who is not followed, anyone who is unreachable, becomes a liability. This is not a problem you solve with better time management or clearer priorities. This is a problem that requires the boundary to be rebuilt, collectively, structurally. What was lost? I want to be clear about what the destruction of this boundary took from you. It took your evenings, the time after work when your parents sat down, ate dinner without interruption, existed as people rather than workers. It took your weekends, the 2 days that were genuinely separate, genuinely yours, genuinely restorative. It took your vacations, the periods when you were unreachable and therefore actually resting, actually recovering, actually living a different rhythm. It took your mental space, the cognitive freedom that comes from knowing you are done for the day, that nothing will intrude, that you can think about other things. It took your relationships, the presence you could offer family and friends when you were not perpetually half available, half distracted, half working. It took your health, the sleep you do not get because you check your phone at 11 p.m., the stress you carry because you are never not working, the burnout that accumulates because you never fully stop. And it took something harder to name, the sense that your life is yours, that you have autonomy over your time, that work is something you do, not something you are. These are not small losses. These are not acceptable trade-offs for technological convenience. These are the things that made life livable, and they were taken without your consent, without compensation, without anyone even acknowledging what was happening. I helped build the tool that took them, and now I'm telling you, this was not inevitable. This was not necessary. This was a choice, our choice, and it can be unmade. Chapter 3. The mechanism. I need to show you how it actually works, not the theory, not the abstract explanation about boundaries and extraction. I need you to see the mechanism itself, the specific way the tools we built converted your time into someone else's profit. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let me start with email. Email was not invented to make you work more. It was invented to replace memos and phone calls. It was supposed to be faster, cleaner, more efficient. And it was, for about 5 years. Then something changed. The change was not in the technology. Email in 2005 worked essentially the same way email worked in 1995. The change was in the expectations surrounding it. In 1995, if you sent someone an email, you expected a response in a day or 2, maybe 3. It was faster than postal mail, slower than a phone call. It had a rhythm. It had boundaries. By 2005, if you sent someone an email, you expected a response in hours. By 2010, minutes. By 2015, the expectation was effectively instant, and if someone didn't respond immediately, you followed up with a text message, a Slack ping, or a phone call asking if they'd seen your email. What happened in those 20 years? The smartphone happened. Before the iPhone, email lived on your computer. You checked it when you sat down at your desk. You responded during work hours. When you left the office, you left email behind. It had a physical location. It had temporal boundaries. The iPhone destroyed both. Suddenly, email was not something you checked. It was something that notified you. It reached into your pocket, vibrated against your leg, demanded your attention regardless of where you were or what you were doing. It followed you to dinner. It followed you to your child's soccer game. It followed you to bed. And because everyone had the same device, because everyone was equally reachable, the expectations adjusted accordingly. This is the mechanism. Your manager sends you an email at 8 p.m. because they know you will see it. They know the notification will reach you. They know the device is in your pocket, on your nightstand, within arm's reach at all times. They do not think of this as asking you to work at 8 p.m. They think of it as just sending a quick email. They tell themselves you can respond tomorrow, but they also expect a response tonight, because everyone responds tonight, because the technology has made tonight and tomorrow functionally equivalent. You receive the notification, you see the preview, you know what the email says. You have 3 choices. 1. Respond immediately. Spend the next 20 minutes pulled out of your evening, your family time, your rest. Get back into work mode, handle the issue. Return to your life jangled and distracted. 2. Do not respond, but think about the email all evening. Wonder if it is urgent. Wonder if your delay will create problems. Wonder if your manager is noticing your silence, interpreting it as lack of commitment. Spend your evening technically free but mentally captive. 3. Do not look at the notification. But you already saw the preview. You already know it is there, and you know that everyone else in your position would have responded by now. None of these choices are freedom. This is what I mean by boundary destruction. The technology did not force you to work at 8 p.m. It simply made not working at 8 p.m. a conscious, effortful, risky choice, while making working at 8 p.m. frictionless, expected, and safe. The path of least resistance became constant availability. And here is what made it profitable. Your salary did not change. When your employer gained access to your evenings and weekends, they did not compensate you for those hours. They did not hire fewer people because each person was now doing more. They simply extracted more from the same number of people at the same cost. Let me quantify this. A typical salaried professional in 1985 worked approximately 45 hours per week. They came in early or stayed late sometimes. They occasionally took work home, but the work they took home was finite, a report to read, a proposal to review, because the technology limited what could be transported and what could be demanded. That same professional today works approximately 55 to 60 hours per week, not because they sit at their desk longer, but because work follows them everywhere. The evening emails, the weekend Slack messages, the vacation day spent just checking in, the morning hour before the office spent clearing overnight messages from colleagues in different time zones. 15 extra hours per week minimum. Multiply by 50 working weeks per year, that is 750 hours annually. At a $75,000 salary, those 750 hours represent approximately $27,000 in uncompensated labor. Every year, per person. Scale that across an organization of 1,000 employees, that is $27 million in extracted labor annually. Labor that would have required hiring additional staff in 1985. Labor that now costs nothing beyond the salary already being paid. This is not a side effect. This is not an unintended consequence. This is the business model. The technology companies, my company, the companies I competed against, the companies that came after, we sold tools to make this extraction possible. We sold them to your employers as productivity platforms and collaboration solutions. We sold them to you as life devices that would make everything easier. Both pitches were true, and both obscured what was actually happening. Your employer bought smartphones and email systems and Slack and Microsoft Teams because these tools allowed them to get more output from the same headcount. They called this efficiency. They measured it in productivity gains. What they meant was, we can now ask our people to work nights and weekends without calling it overtime, without negotiating for it, without even acknowledging it as work. You bought the smartphone because it genuinely did make many things easier. It put the internet in your pocket. It gave you maps and music and the ability to text your family and take photographs and check the weather. These were real benefits. They are still real benefits. But bundled with those benefits was an always-on work portal that you could never fully close. We designed it that way, not because we wanted you to be miserable, not because we sat in conference rooms plotting how to destroy your work-life balance, but because we were solving for engagement, for stickiness, for making the device indispensable. And the way you make a device indispensable is by making it the hub of everything important in someone's life, including work, especially work, because work is where the money is. Not your money. You were never the customer. Your employer was the customer. The enterprise contracts, the bulk licensing, the business solutions, that is where the revenue came from. You were the user. Your employer was the buyer. And the product we sold your employer was access to you. Unlimited access. Unmetered access. Access that never clocks out. The smartphone was the delivery mechanism. Email was the protocol. Notifications were the hook. And your sense of professional obligation, your fear of falling behind, of seeming uncommitted, of losing your job, was the enforcement mechanism. We built the infrastructure. Your employer built the expectations. You internalized both. And now you work 15, 20, 25 hours per week more than your parents did, for effectively less money, while believing this is somehow normal, somehow necessary, somehow the inevitable price of participating in the modern economy. It is not inevitable. It is a design choice that was made systematically and deliberately by people who understood exactly what they were building. I was one of those people. I stood on stages and demonstrated how you could get your email anywhere, anytime. I called this freedom. I showed how you could respond to work messages from the beach, from the park, from your child's school play. I presented this as liberation. You are no longer chained to your desk. I did not mention that you are now chained to something smaller, more portable, and far more invasive. I did not mention that anywhere, anytime means everywhere, always. I did not mention that we had just turned every location into a potential workplace and every moment into potential work time. I did not mention these things because I did not think them through, or because I did think them through and decided the benefits outweighed the costs, or because I thought them through and understood the costs but knew they would be borne by you, not by me, not by the shareholders, not by the people buying the enterprise licenses. The truth is probably all three, at different times, depending on the meeting and the product and the quarter's revenue targets. But the result is the same. We built the mechanism, your employer activated it, and you are living inside it, working harder and earning less, wondering why you are so tired, why you cannot catch up, why the tools that were supposed to save you time have left you with none. Now you know why. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Chapter 4. The Guilt Mechanism. You want to know why you check your email at 9 p.m. Not because your manager explicitly told you to, not because there is a policy requiring it, not because anyone threatened you directly. You check because you feel guilty when you do not. That guilt is not an accident. That guilt is not a character flaw. That guilt is the most sophisticated piece of engineering I ever participated in creating. I need you to understand this. We did not just build tools that made it possible for your employer to reach you at night. We built tools that made you feel morally deficient if you did not respond. The technology is only half the system. The guilt is the other half. The psychological infrastructure. Let me describe what happens in your brain when you silence your work notifications at dinner. You feel a small tightness in your chest, a whisper of anxiety, a sense that you are doing something vaguely irresponsible. You tell yourself you will check later. You check sooner than you planned. When you find 3 messages waiting, you feel a spike of stress, not because the messages are urgent, but because they existed while you were unavailable. This is not your weakness. This is design. We built notification systems that create psychological debt. Every unread message is a small weight. Every delayed response is a minor transgression. The system trains you to feel relief only when the counter returns to zero, and we made sure the counter never stays at zero for long. Your parents did not experience this. When they left the office, there was no accumulating counter of undone communication. There was no number growing in their absence. There was no psychological weight building while they ate dinner with their children. The work that existed when they left still existed when they returned, but they did not carry it as guilt. We changed that. You know the little red circle that appears on your apps, the one with the number inside? We called it the anxiety dot in internal meetings. Sometimes we called it the itch. The term that stuck in the design documents was notification badge, but everyone knew what it really was. It was a guilt trigger. The human brain is not built to ignore quantified obligations. When you see a number, your nervous system interprets it as unfinished business, as debt, as something you owe. We tested variations. We tested dots without numbers. They created less compulsion. We tested numbers without colors. They were easier to ignore. We tested different colors. Blue was too calm. Green was too positive. Yellow was too weak. Red worked best. Red is the color of urgency, of debt, of something wrong that needs correcting. We put red dots on your email, on your messages, on your collaboration tools. We made sure you saw them every time you glanced at your phone, which our other systems had already trained you to do dozens of times per day. Each glance reinforced the loop. There is a number. The number represents something undone. You are responsible. You feel guilty until you clear it. Your employer did not have to tell you to check constantly. The red dot told you. Your own nervous system told you. We built the nagging voice directly into the interface. The optimization of guilt. But the notification badge was just the foundation. We layered additional guilt mechanisms on top of it. Read receipts, the little indicator that tells the sender you saw their message. Now they know you are ignoring them. Now your non-response is not absence, it is a choice. It is a small social transgression happening in real time. Typing indicators, the 3 dots that show someone you are composing a reply. Now, if you start to respond and then stop, they know. They know you engaged and then withdrew. Another small guilt. Last seen timestamps, online status indicators, all the small signals that tell your colleagues and managers exactly when you are available and exactly when you are choosing not to engage. We removed the possibility of innocent absence. We made all absence visible, trackable, and therefore culpable. Your parents could say, "I did not get the message." You cannot. The system testified against you. It recorded your receipt, your reading, your presence. Your non-response is not a technical failure. It is a personal choice, and therefore something you must justify. We made unavailability feel like a moral position you had to defend. The comparison engine. Then we added the social layer. We made sure you could see how quickly other people responded. We time-stamped everything. We created environments where response speed became visible status. You see your colleague reply to the message within minutes. You see another team member active at 10 p.m. You see the timestamp showing your manager sent feedback at 6 a.m. The system does not tell you these people are working unsustainable hours. It does not tell you they are sacrificing their health and relationships. It does not tell you that many of them are also checking compulsively out of guilt. It tells you only that they are available, responsive, engaged. And you are not, if you're trying to have dinner without your phone. We built a panopticon of responsiveness. Everyone can see everyone else's activity level. Everyone can see who replies immediately and who takes hours. Everyone can see who works weekends and who does not. The system does not punish you directly for being slow. It just makes sure everyone can see that you are slower than someone else. The guilt and the career anxiety that follows does the rest. The language of dedication. We also knew the guilt needed justification. It needed a story that made it feel legitimate. So we gave managers and company cultures a language to make constant availability sound like virtue. Responsiveness became being a team player. Checking email at night became dedication. Working weekends became going above and beyond. Answering messages on vacation became leadership. We inverted the moral framework. Your parents' generation considered it admirable to protect family time. To be unreachable in the evening was not selfishness, it was proper priorities. To refuse to work weekends was not laziness, it was healthy boundaries. We flipped it. Now, if you protect your evening, you are not committed. If you refuse weekend work, you are not a culture fit. If you do not check messages on vacation, you are letting the team down. The technology made this language possible. Without smartphones, managers could not expect evening responsiveness. The tools did not exist. With smartphones, managers could expect it, and we gave them the moral vocabulary to demand it without admitting they were demanding it. They do not say, "I expect you to work unpaid hours at night." They say, "I need people who are really committed to our mission." The guilt translates the second statement into the first. You know what commitment means now. It means the red dot does not wait until morning. Why guilt works better than policy. Here is why the guilt mechanism is more effective than any formal policy could ever be. If your employer required you to work nights and weekends in your contract, you could negotiate. You could demand compensation. You could refuse the job. You could organize with other workers and push back collectively. But your employer does not require it in your contract. They just built an environment where you feel guilty if you do not do it voluntarily. Guilt cannot be negotiated with. Guilt cannot be refused. Guilt does not appear in the employee handbook, so it cannot be challenged through HR. Guilt is individually experienced, so it cannot be collectively resisted. You feel like the problem is your own psychology, your own weakness, your own inability to set boundaries, as if boundaries were a personal skill rather than a structural reality that we systematically destroyed. When the system runs on guilt, every worker experiences their overwork as a personal failure to resist, rather than as a collective imposition to oppose. We made exploitation feel like individual choice. That was the most elegant part. What this costs you. Let me be specific about what the guilt mechanism extracts from you. It takes your rest. You cannot fully relax because the possibility of work is always present. The red dot might appear. The message might arrive. Even when you are not working, you are in a state of readiness to work. It takes your attention. Part of your mind is always monitoring for work intrusion. You are never fully present with your children, your partner, your friends, your own thoughts. It takes your recovery. Your body needs genuine downtime to repair itself. Psychological activation, the state of readiness the guilt maintains, prevents deep rest. You are tired in a way that sleep does not fix. It takes your autonomy. You make decisions based not on what you want or need, but on what will minimize guilt. Where you go, what you do, how you spend your time, all filtered through the question of whether you can remain responsive. It takes your dignity. You know at some level that this is not right, that you should be able to eat dinner without monitoring work, that your vacation should be yours. But you do it anyway, and that gap between what you know and what you do erodes your sense of self-respect. The guilt mechanism does not just extract labor hours, it extracts your internal sense of freedom. I am telling you this because I built it, not alone, not as the sole architect, but I approved the designs, I championed the features. I celebrated when adoption metrics showed people checking their phones within minutes of waking. We called that engagement. We measured how quickly people responded to notifications. We optimized the systems to decrease response time. We tracked how many hours per day people spent in our apps. We called this success. I knew what we were building, maybe not all of it. Maybe I did not foresee every mechanism of guilt we were encoding into the tools. But I knew we were making it impossible to be unavailable. I knew we were making work inescapable. I knew, and I built it anyway. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking you to see the system clearly. The guilt you feel is not your fault, but what you do with that understanding, that is your choice.